We knew that even if one attack, one terror attempt will succeed, that might cost the lives of many, many Israelis. So it was very tense.
All right, great to see you again, General Avivi. We are now in Israel for the first time together in Jerusalem, and you're an expert on security. You know what's happening in Israel and really in the world. Give us an update on security. I know that there was an incident on the southern border with Egypt. We just came from Egypt. We were filming, and we crossed from Taba into Eilat. So give us a little bit about that background and that incident, and then what else is happening security-wise for Israel and the world right now.
So in this incident, an Egyptian policeman decided to carry out a suicide attack. He left his position. He went through the fence on the border. He crossed it into the Israeli side. He approached one of our positions where there were 2 soldiers, and he killed them. Following that, he fled into Israel. Some of the forces arrived, saw where he is, engaged with him, and in this fight, another soldier was killed. So 3 soldiers were killed, and this terrorist was killed. And today, the Sinai Peninsula is hardly controlled by Egypt. There is a lot of ISIS cells in the northern part, attacking also Egyptian positions, radicalizing the whole region. And looking at the Egyptian society, a big majority of this society is inclined to the Muslim Brotherhood. The last time they had democratic elections, the Muslim Brotherhood won the elections.
Right.
So obviously they are more inclined to affiliate with Hamas and encourage, Jew hatred and hatred of Israel. So to me, it comes as no surprise to see an attack like that, although we are in a peace agreement. And it's supposed to be a peaceful border, but it's far from being peace.
Yeah. And I know that I'm listening to your briefings, which are really handy for people in the United States to understand, the Bedouin connection and how they're being infiltrated by ISIS and all that. So that's the southern border. What about the northern border? What about Hezbollah? Are there any concerns right now?
So Hezbollah is continuing to build up its capabilities. We have a flow of weapons going from Iran through Iraq and Syria to Hezbollah. The Israeli Air Force keeps attacking and targeting these convoys that are trying to bring these munitions. Hezbollah, on one hand, wants to show that he's relevant and fighting Israel. On the other hand, is dealing with huge problems inside Lebanon. Lebanon is not functioning as a state. And many of the Lebanese people are accusing Hezbollah for the situation, and also accusing Hezbollah of trying to really bring a war into Lebanon, which is not something the Lebanese people want. So it's a double game, Hezbollah wants to be more relevant, wants to show that it's doing something. On the other hand, it has its inner problems. So I would say that the northern border at the moment is fairly quiet.
You have it on both sides, and then you also have it within some of the territories here. But you also have another big issue that you're concerned about, and that's Iran. So explain what's happening now.
So Iran is steadily moving towards military nuclear capabilities. This is something Israel cannot accept. And the Israeli forces are preparing for a scenario where we have to attack these installations and destroy them. And we understand that by doing so, that might bring a regional war with Hezbollah, with Hamas, with other capabilities that Iran has also in Syria and Iraq and in Yemen. But at the moment, the Iranians seem determined to move forward with their plans. They are backed up by the Russians that have become very dependent on Iranian capabilities, which they use against Ukraine. China is more involved. I saw a very interesting number talking about China. It was interesting for me to see how China brokered the deal between Saudi Arabia and Iran, renewing relations between a Sunni leading country to the Shia. That was surprising to a certain extent. But when you look at the economy, it explains everything. Because in 2019, China overall trade in the Middle East was $180 billion. The US was 120. Already China was, gaining in the race and really being more dominant in the Middle East. But 2 years later, in 2021, China overall economic involvement went up to $259 billion, while the US trade went down to 80 billion. 259, 80. And it explains why the Arab countries are starting to shift towards China. China is the #1 trade partner of Saudi Arabia, and it's the #1 trade partner also of Iran. So it's becoming a force that this region cannot ignore. And this is something that the US needs to understand and do something about. And we expect US leadership in the Middle East. We expect the US to be present, to pose a military threat on Iran, to stop Iranian aggression, together with Israel and the Sunni allies. It's not happening at the moment, and that's a concern for us.
You've led troops, you've been a major general in the Israeli army, and now you're leading a team of how many military experts in Israel?
18,000 Israeli officers and commanders, retired or reserve. Yeah. It's a big grassroots movement, and also coupled with a think tank, and we're a very active organization.
When you were leading troops, you discovered how important it was for them to visit Jerusalem. Explain that.
When I was battalion commander, I commanded 800 soldiers in Operation Defensive Shield in April 2002. And the fighting was fierce. It was really, really tough. We fought for 10 months, day and night, foiling terror attacks. We knew that even if one attack, one terror attempt will succeed, that might cost the lives of many, many Israelis. So it was very tense. And after 10 months of fighting, the command told us, you have 3 weeks to get organized and back to 10 months of fighting. This was unprecedented. Usually you deploy 4 months and you train 4 months, but 10 months of deployment and then only 3 weeks to get organized, another 10 months, we never experienced something like that. And I took all my battalion, and I found myself asking a strange question to ask an Israeli soldier. How many of you have ever been in Jerusalem? Israeli soldiers. Half of my battalion has never been in Jerusalem.
That sounds so strange.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And then the other half that actually went to Jerusalem didn't visit the Kotel, didn't visit the Western Wall. Wow. So I had 3 weeks. 1 week was a vacation. 1 week we had to organize the equipment, and we had only 1 week of training. And I said, we are not going to train, we're going to Jerusalem. And I took my whole battalion to Jerusalem. We started with the David City. We connected back 3,000 years to the days of David the king. We went to Temple Mount and to the tunnels, to the Western Wall. We visited the old city. And then we also went to the Knesset and to the Supreme Court. And in the last day, 800 soldiers sat at the house of the President of Israel and spoke with the President. When this battalion went back to deployment, it excelled in a way that no commander in the army could ignore. We didn't lose 1 soldier in combat. We foiled 100% of the terror attacks. And because of that, I was called by the Chief of Staff. He wanted to understand what's going on with this battalion. And I told him, it's all about Jerusalem. It's about spirit. It's worth more than 2 months of training. The soldiers are really, got a really spiritual, enhancement, if you wish. And I understood the value of spirit in combat.
Well, we will continue to pray for you, for your mission, for your people, for the soldiers that are in active duty, for the people of Israel, and for the peace of Jerusalem.
Thank you very much.
God bless you, General Avivi.
Thank you very much.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed our program on YouTube. We want to continue to provide you some great videos on God, the Bible, and how it all connects with our world. It would really help us if you would consider subscribing to the InGrace YouTube channel. We would also like to have you comment. We will try to read and respond to them. And we also need you to hit the notification button and like the InGrace episode that you just saw. These ways will help more people hear about InGrace and more people hear the gospel of grace.